Ladies and gentlemen, and sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Deck Chicago, one of the couple 2 or 3 best podcasts around. So grab yourself a nice cold one and a bowl of sausage, park your keister in your French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your host, Sean. This is going to be the Bears-Packers preview edition, coming a little bit late. I was hoping to record this earlier, but you know how things go. First, I want to talk about the Blackhawks because we haven't talked about them in forever. It's been weeks and weeks because there really hasn't been anything going on. Trade deadlines were silent, or the trade block was silent. Training camp hadn't opened. But since the last episode, training camp has opened. The Blackhawks had their inter-squad scrimmage, and they are currently playing their third game. And we're not going to really talk about too much what the scrimmages look like and what the games have looked like so far because it's preseason hockey. It's basically like Little League hockey. It's a lot of sloppy play, poor goalkeeping, bad offenses, even worse defenses. It's all around the league. It's not even worth talking about. But there's a few other things I do want to talk about. Is the first and foremost is the looming salary cap issue that the Blackhawks are facing. There's the immediate issue that they're facing where before the season starts, they are absolutely going to have to make a trade in order to get under the salary cap. They're about $1.5 million over the cap, and that's if Teuvo Teravainen doesn't make the squad. If Teuvo does make the squad, they're looking closer to $2.5-3 million that they're going to have to be able to dump in salary in order to get under the cap before the season starts. So, looking at the squad, the most natural place that you expect to trade is a defenseman. It's just really the obvious choice. And if it depends on who you're listening to or what you're reading, I think Oduya is a really valuable trade chip right now. He's also making enough salary where they can get you comfortably under the cap and allow you a little wiggle room should you need to make a trade towards the trade deadline. He's been an important player over the last several years, helping them win the Stanley Cups and partnering with Nicholas Hjalmarsson in that second defensive pairing. But I think he's slowing down a lot, and I think you've got some decent players coming up as far as defensemen that you can push in and be able to pair with Hjalmarsson and complete a third pairing. And he's also going to net you something in exchange because Oduya is valuable. There's a lot of teams looking for a lot of help at defensemen, and a defenseman that's making only a moderate sum of money, that's still plays really well, has championship caliber experience under his belt. That's a really valuable trade chip. So, in my opinion, Oduya is really valuable as a trade option. But if you listen to some other people, they're going to say that you can't trade Oduya because you have a really solid core defenseman, and that's what's going to help you in your championship run for this year. I just don't see Oduya as nearly as valuable as Seabrook, Keith, or Hjalmarsson. I think he's much more expendable than any of those three. So I don't know if he's the guy that you absolutely must keep. And then also considering that next year you're going to have Taves and Kane's contracts going up, you're going to need to get rid of some more players, and you're going to have to make some hard decisions on what you're going to do. So two of the conflicting rumors that have been circulating around is one, Versteeg is coming off an off-season of training rather than an off-season of recovering from an injury this year. He's back with the Blackhawks for his first full season since he's been traded, and he's apparently been working really hard because he had a rough time once he got traded back to the Blackhawks, and he was a healthy scratch a few times, and he worked himself into the doghouse. He's, talent-wise, he's a guy that can put up 20 goals, but he's also a guy that could just really flop. So, one rumor is that the Blackhawks aren't interested in trading him because they see him as a legitimate 20-goal scorer that's very cost-effective because the Panthers are sorry, I'm drawing a blank. I believe it's the Florida Panthers paying half of his salary. So he's a cheap option. He's a quality scorer, and he can play any position if need be. The other rumor is that the Hawks are actively shopping Nick Leddy, and in order to get Leddy, the team is going to have to take Kris Versteeg as well. So they're two completely conflicting reports, but I mean, honestly, I could see either one of them happening. Versteeg, when he's at his best, he really can play hockey, but he was just really bad last year, and he just looked like he was completely lost. And I really do see Leddy as another trade option because he's fast, he's young, doesn't make that much money, he's got championship experience, and he's a defenseman. So I wouldn't be surprised if Nick Leddy got traded, but the Blackhawks are going to have to do something, and I'm sure that Stan Bowman's ringing everybody's phone right now, trying to make a trade. So those are things to keep watching. As far as the lines go, I was looking at some of the players. I went to the scrimmage and seeing who was there and what sort of possibilities that there are for openings once the season starts. So I would be really surprised if they trade Patrick Sharp at this point. I think that they're going to try to get this year out of him. But the top line, probably Sharp, Taves, and Hossa. Second line being Saad, Richards, and Kane. Third line, Bickle, Shaw, and Versteeg. And fourth line is Morin, Kruger, and Ben Smith. So that's four lines that you can roll deep, and there's really not much room for anybody else to come up and take spots. So some of these young forwards, unless there's a trade on the offensive side, not going to have much room to move up and take those spots. And then you've got the defensive pairings. Keith and Seabrook are going to be the number one pair. Barring any trades, Oduya, Hjalmarsson will have the second pairing. Right now, Leddy, Roosevelt, but I think I honestly think that even with a trade, Roosevelt is going to have a difficult time, I think, making the squad. And you've got some young defensemen that are chomping at the bit and possibly ready to play in Rundblad, Klaus Dahlbeck, Adam Clendenning, and Steven Johns. Those are guys that put in their time in Rockford. With Rundblad being on the squad last year, is some of these guys are going to be younger, cheaper, better options than Michael Roosevelt. And so don't be surprised if he doesn't make the team, or if they make a trade, you end up with two of those guys in the defensive pairings. Even though the preseason has started and we have games going on, not too much exciting with those sloppy play, but the real excitement is the Blackhawks are absolutely have to make moves, and they're going to have to make some trades, and that's really exciting because this team is starting to take shape, and we're going to see what we're going to throw out there at the Los Angeles Kings to try to take our cup back. Another thing is we have to really keep an eye on is Andrew Shaw in the playoffs was playing second line center with Saad and Kane, and that was against the Kings was a really productive line. But he's been demoted down to third line center with the acquisition of Brad Richards. So you really have to watch this year is how is Andrew Shaw going to respond to a demotion, even though he played really well. And when, as a human being, when you're not performing well and you get demoted, it's still a tough pill to swallow. But when you do your job and you do it really well and you have results and you still get demoted, that's got to be a really hard pill to swallow. I'm really interested in seeing how Andrew Shaw responds. If he responds favorably, I think this is going to be a really good role for him because it's going to be he's going to be the head of that third line, and talent-wise, he's going to have better matchups, and he's still going to have good talent on that third line to play with. I think it could be a good choice for him. It gives the Blackhawks much more flexibility. We will see if he's the team player that we all think he is, and the coaches keep saying he is. This is going to be a good move. It's going to be a more natural fit for him rather than that second line, and he's going to be able to utilize his talents much better. But if he's not who they say he is, and he's going to be upset or take this poorly, this might be not work out so well for the Blackhawks. So that's really the last thing I want to say about the Hawks for right now. We'll get into more of them next week when hopefully they have a trade and we've got the preseason under our belts. And so that's about it for the Blackhawks. And even though Gary's not here with us tonight, in his honor, I'm going to talk about the White Sox before the Cubs. And it's not really so much for Gary as it is for Paulie Konerko. And right now we're in the final series in Paulie Konerko's really good Major League Baseball career. He's retiring at the end of the year. I think we all know. And this is the last 3 games he's playing ever. So that's it's kind of a monumental thing for the White Sox, is because there hasn't been nearly as many players in White Sox history as Cubs that are really beloved by the city. And Paul Konerko is one of them. He's just a really quiet, hardworking guy, and I think that really resonates with Chicago because we really do like our blue-collar type players. Jim Thome was liked when he was here because that's the kind of guy he was. Walter Payton types, where you bring your lunch pail and you put in a hard day's work, and you don't do a lot of trash talking. You're not a lot of pizzazz, and that's really what Paul Konerko is. He's just a guy that goes out there every day and does what he needs to do. I think that really resonated with not just the White Sox fans, but all baseball fans in Chicago as a whole. You can hear Cubs players trash Sox players and vice versa, but I don't think anybody's ever trashed Paulie Konerko. He's just a really upstanding guy, really good baseball player, and has done a lot for that team and for the city. The rest of the baseball world is going to be talking about Derek Jeter and what he did, his accomplishments, and blah blah blah. But he's a New York Yankee, and New York Yankees are always going to have the front page news over the Chicago White Sox. So this is our opportunity to be able to say, hey, we've got a really great baseball player on our side too that is taking his victory lap as well. Not going to be as high profile as Derek Jeter, but definitely as good for baseball as Derek Jeter, and that's Paul Konerko. So thanks for everything you've done, and we wish you well in what you plan to do beyond baseball. And what else about the White Sox? Really not much else. After a few rough outings, Chris Sale's he was already a dark horse for the Cy Young Award, and I think when in one of the previous episodes where I was talking stats and I thought he really had a legitimate argument to be not in the same breath as the Cy Young winner, these last couple outings have been a little rough, and I think he's really worked himself out of it. I don't see him getting anywhere near the votes to be able to be American League Cy Young. It's going to be probably King Felix. And Quintana had the opportunity to bring his mark up to 500, which I think would have been really good for a young pitcher like that to end on a solid note, have a good outing, and be able to get that 500 record. And he really had a rough outing against the Royals, who are a good team, going to make the playoffs. And he fell to what was it, 9-11, and so that's just it's sort of a bummer for a solid pitcher that I think is going to have a good long career in this league, but it is what it is. As for the Cubs, let's take a quick second before we get to the Cubs and mention our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. Hockey comes back to the BMO Saturday, October 11th. So for all the excitement and all of your ticket and information, go to icehogs.com. Also, make sure to check out swerskisports.com. That's our website. It's got all of our contact information. It's got our email address, Bill Swerski, stc@gmail.com. It's got our phone number on there, so if you want your comments on the air, or if you want to talk about your feelings about Paul Konerko, you want to talk about how I suck, you want to just chant Green Bay sucks for 20 minutes, there's a number you can call, leave your message, and we can play it on the air. You can email. If you want to follow us on Twitter, @SwerskiSports.com or Facebook.com/SwerskiSports. Also, make sure to check out our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs, at icehogs.com. As for the Cubs, we've got the season ending for them, and I think you have to consider this season somewhat of a victory. They were terrible. They're last place, but this season could have been much worse, and I think there's a lot of positives to come out of this. And the first we have to talk about is this is the first year under his belt for Ricky Renteria, and he's going to be in the hot seat. This season, he really had no expectations. His expectations were get the most out of the young talent, get the most out of Starlin Castro, get the most out of Anthony Rizzo, get the most out of Jorge Soler and Javi Baez. And I think he did 3 out of the 4, which is absolutely phenomenal. Before getting injured, Starlin Castro was having a great year. Anthony Rizzo is an all-star, and he put up phenomenal numbers. And Jorge Soler came up and had a really productive rookie season. Javi Baez was the only one that struggled, and I think they knew he was going to struggle. And I think it was an exercise in humility and humbling him rather than letting him succeed. I think they're going to do a lot of things as the organization with Javi Baez to try to turn him around, but right now that's neither here nor there. We're talking about Ricky Renteria. So this year, not many expectations. He was brought in to get the most out of young players, but he's starting to be on the hot seat because he's got to start getting results. They've given him the bats. They're starting to accumulate arms, and they're talking about going after a number 1 pitcher. If you've got these rookie players with some decent bats in the roster in your lineup, and you put together a solid starting lineup and starting pitching, then you're going to have to start actually producing. The phases of this rebuild from the ground up are really taking into effect. So they completely gutted Jed and Theo have completely gutted the minor league system and done all kinds of talent acquisition. They've modernized the facilities in the Dominican and their spring training facility. They've gotten rid of minor league affiliates that had outdated facilities and upgraded to teams that had much better facilities. They've brought a lot of the young talent up in the majors, and now they've said that they're going to open their wallets and start spending on free agents. And you finally have the first phases of the Wrigley renovations underway. So all that leaves now is success at the minor league or at the major league level. You have success at the minor league level. You have success in the business side. You have attendance numbers that are turning around. You have an increase in advertising revenue and TV revenue coming soon and radio revenue. So now it's time to put that product on the field. And that's Ricky Renteria's job. So he went from being a guy that had very low expectations of him to a guy that has very high expectations of him. He's going to have to win. So we're going to see how that affects him and affects his managing style and how he proceeds in the offseason. I don't think there's any chance that he gets fired in this offseason, even though the poor record, because he succeeded at the things he was expected to this year. But next year, he's really going to have a lot more expectations put upon him. Ricky Renteria is a guy who's much more like a grandfatherly almost, where he's going to be more uplifting. He's going to be more complimentary. He's going to be more take you under the wing. Unlike Dale Swaim, who was he had no sugarcoating at all and told it how it was. And I think that grated on a lot of players. I think a lot of players took it hard. And I think a lot of the young players didn't thrive under that kind of management. So, definitely going to see how these expectations change Ricky Renteria and how he proceeds going forward with the Cubs. In other news with the Cubs is, in an interview, Anthony Rizzo said it's about ready for changes at Wrigley Field. And it's definitely true, is they have such outdated facilities. Sure, it's the friendly confines. Sure, it's the lovable park that everyone loves to go to. Sure, it looks beautiful from a fan's point of view. But if you're a player and you're going to facilities that are just top-notch and have these amazing facilities and all these things they're able to do with batting cages and being able to not be injured and work on recovery and warming up and these top-notch facilities inside the stadium, the Cubs don't have that. It's really old and really archaic, and it's not set up for modern times. So it's not like the Cubs players are isolated in a bubble and they don't see this elsewhere. They're traveling for 50% of their games. So 50% of the time they're playing in really nice facilities. Then 50% of the time they come home to crappy facilities. Wrigley Field looks beautiful. Wrigley Field has amazing fans. It's an amazing location. It's great to play as a Cub, but they need to modernize the facilities. They need to bring those up to the 21st century. And I know that Anthony Rizzo caught some flack for some of the things he said about it, but I completely agree with him. You need to bring this stadium into the 21st century. And the Cubs organization from Jed Hoyer on up all agree, and that's part of the plan. It's just been a nightmare process to get it through, as we've documented time and time again on the show, from external conflicts to financing to the city to rooftop owners. It's just been a nightmare process that finally seems like it's resolved for the most part and is proceeding forward. So Anthony Rizzo's going to get his wish. It's just going to be how long it takes for them to get those facilities fully operational. Another interesting thing that I saw was Patrick Mooney from Comcast Sportsnet. He does the Cubs beat writing. He brought up an interesting signing for the Cubs, not one that they've done, but one that he was proposing, is Justin Masterson, a pitcher who's bounced around with a few teams. He was proposing that he could be a guy that was a low-risk, high-reward type signing. Another project that Chris Bozio, Cubs pitching coach, could turn around and make him, a decent mid-level starter. He's 6'6", right-hander, for those who don't know. And this year, he's 6-9 with a just under 6 ERA. So he's but he's not without talent. He's not like he came out of nowhere and was able to pitch in the majors. He was a second-round pick in 2006, so he's definitely got talent. So this is sort of one of those kind of guys that the Cubs look for that have the talent level, that whether it's mentally they weren't able to do it or something wrong physically that they hope to correct. But that is an interesting choice in Justin Masterson, because he is a guy with talent, but just hasn't been able to put it all together at a major league level. I don't foresee it happening, but it's definitely an interesting choice and just something to think about, because with the Cubs aren't going to be able to spend like the Yankees. They're not going to be able to spend like the Dodgers or the Angels. They are going to have money to spend, and sometimes they're going to have to take some risks where they go low risk, high reward, and make really smart, calculated choices and hope to pay off, like the Jake Arrieta thing. That was an amazing pickup, and Jake Arrieta is a really huge part of this Cubs team, and part of the reason that they've finished really strong in the second half and been a halfway decent team that's playing spoiler. I guess that's about it for that. Bulls, I don't really have anything to talk about with the Chicago Bulls. We'll talk more about them. Hopefully next episode we'll have the guys from another podcast, Ball. We're going to have them on the air. I'm going to be on their show on Sunday, and hopefully they're going to be on next week, and we could talk a lot more Chicago Bulls. The last thing I want to talk about is we've got a huge game on our hands Sunday. The Chicago Bears and the Green Bay Packers. This is the longest running rivalry in the NFL, and this is no different this year. These are two teams that, even though they're a little down in the standings right now, I think everyone foresees these two fighting it out for the division title by the end of the year. So this early matchup is going to be really important, because this is going to be a huge boost to A, their confidence, and B, their position in the standings. And so this is going to be a big game, even though it's only early in the season. As a whole, this Bears defense has been reminiscent of the 2005 defense, where they've just really opportunistic, more opportunistic than good. Kyle Fuller has taken over, the king of the peanut punch. Jared Allen is really starting to turn it on recently. Marshall, Jeffrey, and Bennett make a formidable 1-2-3 combo. So what's in store for us this week versus the Packers? So let's talk about the Packers offense first. Aaron Rodgers and head coach Mike McCarthy are seemingly not on the same page. If you just watch the games with the play calls and listen to what they say after the games and press conferences, it's just really not matching up and meshing with what you would expect from a head coach and a quarterback. The high potent Packer offense has just really sputtered so far this season. They rank 27th in points per game, 28th in yards per game, 22nd in passing, 26th in rushing, 79 yards per game on the ground, and 211 in passing. That's just really not what you expect out of a Green Bay offense, especially one with a healthy Aaron Rodgers. Last year, it seemed that part of the problem was Mike McCarthy. He was just really unwilling to run the ball and stick with the run. But after watching the Lions-Packers game last week, it just seems like Mike McCarthy is being too stubborn with trying to stick to the run. It wasn't working. The Packers don't have a good offensive line, and they just really couldn't get a push against that really tough defensive front from the Lions. But he kept sticking it out with the run, and it was a close game. And had they tried to do some different things in the air and the passing attack, I think they could have taken advantage of the Lions and put some points on the board. The offensive line has just been a disaster. It's neither opening holes for Eddie Lacy nor keeping defenders off of Aaron Rodgers' back. So it's not doing his job at all. However, they're just still really dangerous. They've got Aaron Rodgers at the helm. They've still got Randall Cobb. They still got Jordy Nelson going deep. This offense is way too good to keep down forever. So you're going to have to wonder, is the problem that the offense is sputtering, or is it that the defenses they've played so far have been really tough? Statistically, Seattle was the best defense in NFL history last season, and this year they're currently ranked 7th. Still a really good defense. And then the Packers faced them week 1. Week 2, they played the Jets, who are the number 2 defense overall in the NFL, and they put some points up on them. And then the Lions are the number 1 defense in all of NFL, and that's who they played last week and had some troubles. So will facing the 23rd ranked Bears defense be just the cure that the Packers are looking for? Some of the questions you have to ask are, can the Packers offensive line keep Willie Young and Jared Allen from going gangbusters on Aaron Rodgers? And can Eddie Lacy get it going versus a Bears defense that struggles against the run? On the flip side, let's look at the Bears defense. This is a case of, do you buy the numbers or do you buy what your eyes are telling you? Statistically, this is the 23rd ranked defense. They're 15th versus the pass and 26th versus the run. But if you go by the eyeball test, are they really that bad? I don't think so. Sure, they've given up some big runs, mostly against the Bills, and the first half of the 49ers game, they struggled a lot. But the second half of that game, and then last week's game against the Jets, they've looked pretty decent. They've had a few difficulties here and there getting off the field on third downs, but I'll argue that this defense has been fairly decent and has gotten better each week. For the first 3 weeks, the Bears have been facing their Achilles heel. Great running games, mobile quarterbacks, and the dreaded read option. The Jets are the number 2 rushing offense, and the Bills are the number 10 rushing offense. And although he's really athletic and he's got decent speed for a quarterback, Aaron Rodgers isn't Colin Kaepernick in the running threat, both the threat and the ability. So Aaron Rodgers, sure, he can scramble and he can pick up some first downs and he can keep plays alive with his feet. But Colin Kaepernick is an absolute threat for a running home run, and Aaron Rodgers is not. Aaron Rodgers is a much better complete quarterback, don't get me wrong, but as far as being a threat to run out of the pocket or not being able to get the sack because he's too athletic, Aaron Rodgers isn't in the same class as Colin Kaepernick, and he certainly is not going to run the read option. This is going to allow the Bears' defensive ends to really pin their ears back and go after Rodgers. And the defensive ends have looked good, optimistically pretty good so far, and Jared Allen is getting much better, and Willie Young has looked really good. And that's even despite having to play against a lot of read option type plays. Also, without a huge fear of the Packers running the ball like they did with the Jets, the Bears are going to be able to be more flexible in their defensive packages. They're not going to have to rely on 8 men in the box to stop the run. So they're going to be able to be more flexible, send some blitzes, fake 8 men in the box and drop people into coverage. They're going to be able to do some more complex things because they're not going to have to rely on that extra man to stop the run. The downside is the injury bug. At one point last week, the Bears were playing their number 4 safety and Vereen, and their number 5 safety, the recently signed Ahmad Dixon, because Conti was hurt, Mundy was hurt, McCray was hurt. But it appears that all 5 safeties are going to be back in action, and they're going to be needed against the Green Bay Packers, who exploded in the second half of their game against the Jets. So the questions for the Bears are, can the Bears get Aaron Rodgers? Can they sack him? Can they consistently apply pressure to him? Because that's the way to beat him, is if you give him time, he's going to pick you apart no matter how good your cornerbacks are and your safeties are. If you give him time, he's going to pick you apart. So they're going to need to consistently get him pressure and get him rolling. And can they contain Randall Cobb and Jordy Nelson with their depleted secondary? Those are the big questions that you have to ask the Bears. On the Packers' defensive side, statistically, the Pack have the number 20 defense and are third from last in run defense. They've been pretty good against the pass, ranking 6th overall, which is really good. And they have the ever-dangerous Clay Matthews rushing the passer. What this amounts to basically is going to be strength versus strength and weakness versus weakness. The Bears have a good passing attack and really sound pass blocking. The Packers can defend the pass, and they can really get after the quarterback with Matthews coming on one side and Julius Peppers on the other. Then again, the Bears can't run the ball to save their lives, and the Packers can't stop the run to save their lives. So the question for the Pack is, if the Bears commit to the run, can the Packers stop them? Because it's going to be a really long day for Green Bay if they can't stop the Bears' running attack, because that offense is going to be really clicking if they can get a run going. And can they take Brandon Marshall away like the Jets did? The Jets just blanketed Brandon Marshall, and they said, let somebody else beat us. And sure, the offense put up some points, but not nearly as many as they could have if they would have done a standard defense and not trying to take away Brandon Marshall. Then you've got the Bears offense. They've stumbled a bit with an inability to run the ball, and they've had some costly drops and penalties along the way. But they're extremely talented, and just like the Packers, they're poised to have a breakout game sooner rather than later. Jeffrey, Marshall, and Bennett, as I said earlier, are a really fantastic 1-2-3 punch. Forte is a phenomenal all-around back that's really dangerous catching the ball out of the backfield. But then again, you've got Jeffrey nursing a hamstring, and starting center Roberto Garza, starting guard Matt Slauson, and Brandon Marshall all nursing ankle injuries. So the question is, can Brandon Marshall have a bounce-back game, or will the Pack use the same technique of doubling him that the Jets did and just take him out of the game? And can the Bears get the ground game going? My prediction for this game is I think that this is going to be a reasonably high-scoring game. I think the Bears are going to be able to get the run going decently enough, and they're going to use the short passing game to Bennett, Dante Rosario, and Matt Forte, and that's going to keep the chains moving and them putting up points on the board. But I see the Packers putting a lot of points on the board too. I think the Bears are going to be able to get some pressure on him, but on the plays that they don't, the Packers are going to be able to get big plays and quick strikes to overcome the pressure that the Bears are going to apply. And I see the Packers coming in and winning this game 31-27, unfortunately. But here's to hoping to the best. That's going to do it for this episode. We're going to have another one after the Bears game. We're going to break down, and we're going to hope to have Lester Wiltfong from Windy City Gridiron on. And until next time, bear down, and thanks for checking us out.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears.
Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.